Dear viewers across the world, most welcome to my channel NAGA World Conflict Zones. Context: the Israeli army's propaganda war. While the bombing in mercilessly Gaza and killing children, the Israeli army kept tweeting that Israel is a victim. On May 14, the official Twitter account of the Israeli military tweeted a pop quiz video inviting viewers to imagine that they themselves were the Israeli armed forces deciding what to do in response to rocket fire from the Gaza Strips. The answer options were A. Nothing, allow terrorists to destroy Israeli cities, or B. Target the terrorist who fires the rockets. According to the military, there was only one right answer, option B. In really, a more accurate answer would have been something like C. Bomb Gaza to a Smith screen and massacre entire Palestinian family in response to rockets that are not even capable of destroying Israeli cities and that are only being fired at Israel because Israel has spent the past 73 years massacring and otherwise tormenting Palestinians. Nearly 250 Palestinians have thus far been killed, including 66 children, in the Israeli assault that began on May 10. As usual, the Israeli military Twitter account has served as a valuable weapon for conducting a parallel propaganda war to bolster the physical one. The account, which currently boasts 1.5 million followers, is largely dedicated to inverting the roles of victimizer and victim to portray Israel as the latter. The theory, a formidable task given that victims do not usually violently erect their country on other people's land and subject to rightful inhabitant to ethnic cleansing and slaughter. The completely disproportionate destruction in Israel and Gaza means that the Israeli military is often reduced to tweeting about air raid siren with helpful colorful maps. Every red dot marks siren in Israel over the last 30 minutes. Israel is under attack. If the red dots were not traumatizing enough, a tweet on May 11 encouraged Twitter user to listen to an audio clip of siren in Tel Aviv and the imagine hearing a sound, the having second to run for your life. On May 12, another tweet announced, "It is 3 a.m. More rockets are being fired to Tel Aviv. Families are being waken up and rush to bomb shelters. Never mind the lack of air raid, siren or bomb shelter in Gaza. Imagine being, say, 6-year-old Suzy Ikushanta pulled from the rubble of her Gaza City home 7 hours after an Israeli airstrikes killed her mother and 4 siblings. Or imagine being Iman Bashar, a teacher with the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, who on May 13 tweeted, "Tonight I put the kids to sleep in our bedroom so that when we die together and no one would live to mourn the loss of one another." The Israeli army is all about imaging, but only from Israelis' invented perspective. Another especially sensational video tweet titled "Imagine this was your reality" purport to show how all of Israel is under fire via a montage of rocket flames and people running. The video incites viewers to imagine if it was Washington, imagine if it was Paris, imagine if it was London. Meanwhile, the same army continues to inflict an apocalypse of cinematic proportions upon the Gaza Strips. Imagine Israel as the victim requires a good deal of imaginations indeed. Occasionally, the army urges the Twitter sphere to imagine, even though an alleged Palestinian's perspective, its May 18 video tweet, Hamas use of human shield explained begins. Imagine your home surrounded by terrorism, something that presumably does not require stress of the imaginations for Gaza residents, watching as Israeli flattened high-rise buildings around them. According to the beyond tiresome Israeli narrative, Palestinian terrorists embedded in civilian areas and are therefore to blame when Israel wipe out civilians. To be sure, the army regularly provides righteous evidence in support of these narratives, as would be expected of any other entity with such technological prowess. For example, a new now detected version of the Hamas use of human shield explained video included footage of what Israel claimed were Hamas rockets embedded in civilian neighborhoods in Gaza. But as Reuters journalist Ramphel Shatter pointed out, that footage was actually of 2018 Israel training exercise in Gaza, where Israeli Shatter went on to the remarks that the fact that Israeli military has trouble distinguishing Hamas rocket from Israeli rocket does not inspire confidence in the quality of their intelligence. A similar digital snap befell the state of Israel in May 2010, when the army killed 8 Turkish activists and 1 Turkish American on board the Mavi Marmara, the flagship of flotilla seeking to deliver aid to Gaza. As per the official Israeli line, the Israeli commandos who had descended from helicopters shooting people were the real victim of episode, and the Israeli foreign minister went about uploading photographs of the weapons allegedly found on board, including marbles, kefias, keychain, knives, and snapshots. This slideshow photo was initially specified as having been taken in February of 2006, that is more than 4 years before the airborne commandos were brutally assaulted in the middle of the sea by people delivering baby incubators and medicine to a besieged coastal enclaves. Granted, when your whole victimhood narrative is a lie in the first place, what need is there to be meticulous about the particulars? In the end, if you are the Israeli army and you have got an internet connection, there is pretty much nothing you cannot argue. Where the army in charge of tweeting about other varieties of current events, we would likely hear of their assaulting hunting rifles and snorkelers, legs attacking sharks, and chainsaws being victimized by tree trunk, mice being eaten by seas, and so on and so on. As for the role of journalists in the transmission of the Israeli propaganda, something the Western corporate media has long been willfully guilty of, it has been widely claimed that Israel's military duped the foreign press into reporting a ground invasion of Gaza on May 13 in order to propel Hamas fighter into tunnel targeted of massive attack. Of course, there are also other options for dealing with the media, like obliterating their office in Gaza as it happens on May 15. Imagine if it was Washington, Paris, or London. The Israeli Army's Twitter explanations for the attack on the 11-story building, which destroyed the office of Al Jazeera and the Associated Press, as well as numerous civilian residences, was that it was an important base of operations for Hamas military intelligence. More on point was the prominent satirical outlet The Onion, which called on Israel to reduce the Onion's own international offices to charred rubble as soon as possible, lest there were any Hamas agenda hiding out there. The article urged Israel not to give any advance warning to the tenant located in the buildings, concluding that if carpet bombing the entire city block in which our offices are located will finally put an end to this cycle of the violence, it will have been well worth any inconvenience. No, as the Israeli army continues to wage physical and digital war, annihilating the truth in the process, it is time to reduce its narrative to rubble. So, in this case, propaganda against Palestine is ongoing by Israel, but world knows what is going on in this area. So, once upon a time will come when Israel understands the reality.